Community has launched the campaign to try and counter the extremists.
Now speaking out to denounce terror and extremism.
30,000 people formed a human chain in the south this afternoon in the name of peace.
We're asking if religious intolerance is on the rise.
We believe that religious freedom is a fundamental human right.
Giving a message that Islam is a religion of peace.
We must all endeavor to spread love and a sense of community.
In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, may the peace and blessings of Almighty God be upon you. Welcome to this, episode 10 of Press Point. Today we're looking at the rise of terrorism and extremism within Africa. In particular, we're looking at the recent harrowing attacks which took place within Kenya in a shopping mall, and in Nigeria in relation to Boko Haram and the shooting of students in the northeastern district of Kobe. There's been a huge loss of life, and it's had a massive impact on the global media and as well as public opinion around the world in relation to Islam. So we're asking a few questions. We're saying what's happened to get an up-to-date factual analysis of the situation. We also need to understand some of the causes and the actual drivers behind this terror. And we're also looking at solutions and how we can overcome this terrorism and provide a solution for Africa to create a peaceful and harmonious continent within which freedom of religion and democracy is able to flourish. As ever, we have very good guests in the studio with us, but of course I'm joined today by Kaleem Sadiq, my good brother. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Islam, Jazakallah, Jonathan Saab, and a dear Assalamu alaikum to our viewers who are watching us all around the world. Do remember this is a live show and we want to hear your views. Please send us your tweets and your Facebook messages to presspoint@mta, and our team will also be receiving your tweets and emails on presspoint@mta.tv.
Now in the studio, Kaleem Sahib, we have, of course, on my immediate left, Dr. Iftikhar Yaz Sahib. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Dr. Iftikhar Yaz Sahib is, of course, the ambassador to the Tuvalu Islands in the South Pacific, as well as being the chair of the Human Rights Committee in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide. Assalamu alaikum, welcome upon the show. We, of course, as well, we have another familiar guest, which is Abdul Wahab Adam Sahib. This is the president of the Ahmadiyya community, a very familiar face for many of the African viewers within Ghana and across the continent as well. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
We also have on via Skype Dr. Fashola, who is the respected head of the Ahmadiyya community in Nigeria. He will be giving us a up-to-date factual analysis of the situation in Nigeria in light of the recent attacks, and particularly looking at the issue of Boko Haram. Now, Kaleem, I know you've been looking a lot at the situation in Kenya and Nigeria. I know you've got some very good research on it, so let's start with part one and look at the actual attacks within Kenya and Nigeria.
Sure, I'm sure the world's aware of what actually happened in both Nigeria and Kenya. We first look at Reuters, and this article is in Reuters, and it's titled "Islamists Claim Gun Attack on Nairobi Mall, at least 39 dead." Now the number of people killed was actually far greater. This was an attack that took place on the Westgate Mall, and we have a graphic image of people fleeing for their lives with their loved ones. And this was done by a group known as the Al-Shabaab, which focused their attention on this mall, which was frequented by foreigners and Kenyans as well. They attacked many civilians, and the siege lasted for many hours and included a large bomb explosion. The nature of the attack was quite horrific, and in this second article on MSN News we can see how people who had survived the ordeal had also mentioned how they were quizzed about different aspects of Islamic knowledge to try and see if they could spare certain people based on the responses that they had given. Now, many people have looked into why this has actually taken place and why this has happened, and it's seen as a PR stunt with the Muslim masses, where the terrorists are trying to gain more strength. And David Garstein-Ross, and it's highlighted here, has basically said that what this shows is Al-Qaeda's acknowledgement that the huge masses of Muslims they have killed is an enormous PR problem within the audiences that they are trying to reach. And he's the director for the Center of the Study of Terrorist Radicalization. Turning from the east of Africa to the west of Africa, Nigeria is a country composed of many different people from different ethnic and religious groups, and this is an unfortunate image of a school that has been completely razed to the ground by a group known as Boko Haram, which not only destroyed the building but also left around 50 students dead. So two horrific atrocities taking place on two different sides of Africa.
Yes, so let's get some analysis on this. Amir Sabghana, we've seen a huge, or at least, again, Western perceived, certainly from where we are here in London, a lot of talk of Boko Haram, a lot of talk of Al-Shabaab, with a great deal of fear as well attached to that. What is causing this increased rise of activity over maybe the last decade or perhaps a little longer within Africa?
Well, the Holy Quran begins with a very inspiring verse. In the name of Allah, most gracious and merciful. That shows how gracious and merciful Allah is. And then all praise is due to Allah, Lord of all the worlds. Which means that all people across the world, especially Muslims, should be made to appreciate the beauty of the creation of the Almighty and show gratitude to the Almighty by preserving, you know, the beautiful creation of Allah for us, the present generation, as well as for posterity. Now, that is not what terrorists do. What we know about terrorism is they destroy the creation of Allah. The most important aspect of the creation of Allah is life, human life, very, very sacred, according to the religion of Islam. And yet, this is what they do. They destroy life. Now, if you consider what had happened in Kenya, we had one of the very senior members of government of Ghana, you know, involved. He was killed in cold blood. The man was going about his legitimate business. And yet, in faraway Kenya, he was killed. Now, when these things happen, you cannot associate that with the religion of Islam. How do you do that? Because the religion of Islam has nothing to do with acts of terrorism, with this type of, you know, unnecessary destruction of life. And so it has nothing to do with the religion of Islam.
But this is the shocking thing, Amir Sabghana.
Very, very shocking.
They've said in particular, and Iftikhar Yasab, I know that you've looked at this as well, as they've said that what they did in the mall was they would go to individuals and they would say, what knowledge do you have of the Quran? What knowledge do you have of the family of the Holy Prophet of Islam? And on that basis, they would choose the people that they would kill and wouldn't kill. I mean, we know Amir Sabghana said this is fundamentally against the first verse of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha. But is that type of behaviour justifiable within Islam, or is it completely contrary to the teachings of Islam?
Well, actually, you see, all these groups, which are known to be terrorist groups, particularly in Muslim countries, they got their inspiration from Osama bin Laden. And Osama, back in February 1998, he issued a fatwa. And that fatwa is, the ruling, that is the fatwa, is to kill the Americans and their allies. This is an individual duty for every Muslim who can do it in order to liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and the Holy Mosque in Mecca. This is in accordance with the words of Almighty God. So this is the inspiration behind all these. And therefore, as I was saying earlier on, that their object is to enforce the type of Islam they consider to be the right type of Islam, which is totally, absolutely wrong and totally against the very fundamentals of Islam.
Yes. But this is particularly work which Boko Haram have been doing. So let's go to Skype as well to build on these ideas. Amir Sab, Nigeria, we've heard from Iftikhar Yasab that this is essentially coming from Osama bin Laden and the same strain of fundamentalism which developed in that line, particularly through Al-Qaeda, and that's its sort of modern realisation. But you've had a particular problem with Boko Haram, which is sort of manifesting within different areas of your country, particularly the northeast area. What sort of impact have they had within Nigeria on all different areas of life? What sort of impact are Boko Haram having?
As a matter of fact, I do not think Boko Haram is connected with Al-Qaeda. Boko Haram started as a kind of political weapon some groups have started long ago in Nigeria through political weapon. And the politicians use them, and when they get out of hand, they become terrorists-like. Now, what happened with Boko Haram was that it was existing before, and they were being used by politicians. And then when it came to the position when their leader was killed extrajudicially, they became violent and started to attack government forces. Now, the Boko Haram development in Nigeria is a consequence of political rivalry, corruption, bad governance. And it's not having any serious impact on the whole nation because people knew it's a political problem. When the southern person, Christian, became the president of the federation, the activities of this Boko Haram grew enormously. It's like a kind of protest to the governance of the country. People think that those who should govern by now, it should be the northerner. It should be their turn because there was zoning in this country. And say, okay, presidency should now be zoned to the northern Nigeria and should be by a northerner who is a Muslim. Presently, we have a southerner who is a Christian. And since the southerner who is a Christian became president, this activity has grown up. It's purely a political problem. People have discovered that religion is a very potent weapon. They're not using religion.
I mean, if this is such a political problem, which is a good thing, I guess, for many people to hear, then why is it so closely connected to Islam, and at least in terms of the narrative and the message which they give out? Is this almost a hijacking of Islam by Boko Haram? Is that the point here?
Definitely. The killing of students in the north, 50 students, they were Muslim students. They are northerners. So those who killed them, they are unidentified gunmen. Boko Haram has not claimed that they did it. The press, whenever some criminals go and kill people, the press says Boko Haram. People have not been arrested, brought to open court, and let us know what is going on. There's a lot of falsehood going on. There's no doubt that we have some extremism, but it's highly restricted. No Muslim groups in Nigeria have supported this group. They are like unknown, and there is a lot of hidden secrets about this group. We believe that some people want to destabilize this country and want to use religion for that purpose. The State Security Service has called all Muslim leaders, all Christian leaders to warn us that some group of people are planning to be attacking churches and mosques so as to cause destabilization of the country so that Christians and Muslims want to fight each other. What is going on is not...
So, Amir Sab Nigeria, this is perfect. So this leads us in very nicely to some prepared research that we've done within Britain to find out what the British people are thinking about these recent attacks within Kenya, within Nigeria, to get a sense of what the UK public, how they've responded. So let's go to that now.
I think it's very complicated, but it's to do with regional tensions and especially with the Al-Shabaab group. It's to do with international conflicts.
I think there is a strain of extremism within Islam, and whether these are true Muslims, I'm not sure, or whether it's just an excuse they use to carry out the attacks.
Because I think a very small minority of people maybe justify their actions through religion, but I don't think it's representative of Islam as a culture or as a religion.
I think it's probably to do with issues in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think there's general tensions between the West and East, so it's maybe in response to that.
In my opinion, like what they do in Syria now, like I'm a Syrian citizen, there's many tourists in Syria, and they do so much officially in Islam, Islam under the Islam, but they're not Muslims. They're not Muslim at all. They just like use the Islam to make themselves like cover.
I think personally what the guy did, the attacks that he did, are nothing to do with Islam. And the thing is, people always have this way of correlating Islam and terrorism, whereas Islam is obviously a religion of peace and there's no link between the two. So if there is a rise in terrorism, then that's a wrong.
I don't think the Muslim community is actually standing up and speaking out against these attacks. I think it should do more.
They're using this because they just have, they understand, the people are doing this, they understand wrongly what is mean of Islam. Islam is peace, Islam it's about good things, Islam is about no force.
I think it's just an excuse for them to carry out these extreme ways of being violent and sticking it on, pinning it on a religion when, as I said before, Islam promotes peace and it shouldn't be like this.
So we've seen some very interesting views on the streets of London, but similar views are being expressed throughout Twitter as well. We can turn to a few tweets, first of all from Baraka Nyagi, which says that we can't allow Kenya to become another Nigeria, a state torn in the middle by religious differences. Terrorism and violence cannot go unchecked. Renaissance Man, who quotes the President of Kenya, says, terrorism in itself is a philosophy of cowards. And lastly, Babatunde Razawanu says, my thoughts are with Kenya as they grieve but remain resolute against terrorism. Nigeria should take notes. Kenya is an African country.
It's a very powerful quote, I think, of the Kenyan president saying that this is essentially cowardice, and something hopefully we can come on and look at in the second part, because this is essentially attacks upon innocent civilians. So I think that resonates a lot, doesn't it? Now, that was our first part. That focused particularly on the factual background of the two attacks. Now, let's look in part two more widely at the rise of extremism within Africa. And Brother Kaleem, I know, again, you've got some good research for us. What have
so
you
the
found?
first part of research that we turn to is from the Las Vegas Guardian, and it's entitled Nigerian Terrorism, Why Africa is the Next Big Battleground Against Islamic Extremism. And here you have a graphic image of some people in the army walking through the desert. But the reason that people have said that extremism is flourishing in Africa has been seen in this paragraph, which says that why are these hardline Islamic extremists flourishing in Africa? For one, they survive best in areas where government forces are weaker and don't have a control. These groups can take over regions where villages and settlements are more secluded and scattered, where their victims have little or no police force or local government troops to protect them. By setting up in these remote areas, the terrorists can force their own brand of law and order on the local populations, where little exists before, and they can hide better from any military opposition that comes their way. Another thing that we've come across is by Pew Research, which is a think tank based in Washington, D.C., and does a lot of research on public opinion. And basically what we can see here is climate change and financial instability are seen as top global threats. As we go down, we can actually see that in addition to climate change and financial instability, the third thing that people were most worried about is also Islamic extremism, not only in Western Europe and in North America, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. And when we look at the numbers, Islamic groups and the worry about Islamic extremist groups, when you look across the world, in US and Canada, it's fairly high, around the 50%, but it's not that different in Africa. It's around 56% in Africa as well, so not a difference in opinion. And do remember that this research was done in June before the attacks. So we can expect that there's going to be a much larger number of people worried in this part of the world as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess it does. I mean, it's interesting that within the continent of Africa, where there is not necessarily in Ghana, but in other areas, a lot of poverty, a lot of real financial and economic challenges, their main concern for many of them, sub-Saharan Africa, is in fact terror. So, what is, would you say, Amir Sabghana, what is causing this rise of concern amongst Africans, and what's behind the change of opinion internally within the continent?
So when you look at the research that has just been shared with us, the research information, you are talking of people who are going to smaller settlements where the government, is weak, or the military hasn't got that standing, and so they can easily mobilize themselves and then take over settlements and so on. It comes out of civil wars. In a country where you have civil war, ethnic, various ethnic groups fighting among themselves and fighting one another, that is the way to create this type of avenue for extremists to rise. So one of the best things to do really is to ensure that the national cake, as we call it, you know, in Ghana we have what we call kenke. That's a much cheaper thing than cake, because cake you have to add a lot of eggs and milk and so on. But national kenke is shared equitably so that people are satisfied with why they belong to a country and why they think that they have a stake, you know, in the progress and the development of the country. That is.
I want to take this point and put it directly to Amir Sahib Nigeria, if I may. Okay. That'd be very interesting. Amir Sahib Nigeria, we've heard from respected Amir Sahib Ghana that his perception of the rise of terror, which it seems to be very powerful, is that civil wars are being fueled, particularly by a lack of equity and a lack of equitable distribution of the wealth within Africa. Would this have an impact, or is this fueling terrorism, particularly within Nigeria? For example, within the northern regions, is it a lack of sharing of the metaphorical cake?
Actually, it's the neglect of the masses. There are millions of jobless youths. There is tremendous poverty, illiteracy, lack of education. All this has produced those who are hopeless and helpless. And they are easy instruments in the hand of diabolical people. Religion is actually being used by politicians to further their cause. Both religion and tribalism are two potent instruments that politicians are using to pursue their selfish interests. And this terrorism is thriving where you have enormous corruption, bad governance, joblessness, illiteracy, disease, and so on and so forth. So a lot of youth are frustrated. And that is why these things cannot be stopped. In Africa presently, we are practicing Western democracy. And the Western democracy that we are practicing is such that it breeds corruption. To get to power, you need to be sponsored by wealthy people who are corrupt. They made their money from corruption, and they now use this money to sponsor candidates. So corruption goes on. And those who are frustrated are instrumental in the hand of people. That is why the State Security Service warned us that people will use religion to cause chaos. Muslims and Christians, they are united in Nigeria. They are friendly, and they live together in peace. But this Boko Haram is a highly restricted group in the northeast. I do not believe that they are the ones who have gone to kill students in the College of Agriculture. We have a lot of unidentified gunmen. Whenever any criminal groups, gunmen go and attack and kill people, they say it's Boko Haram. The government has not been able to arrest people, bring them to court to check, and let us know what's going on. There's lack of transparency in the whole system.
Well, you've given me a very, very valuable, or us a very valuable insight. I think we've looked domestically at what's causing it within nations, but I'm very interested in Dr. Tukoyasab, if I can quickly come to you. I know that you've looked at this particularly from an international angle and you've looked from the human rights angle. To what extent is this homegrown, and to what extent is this imported terror with a sort of a global or a strain of ideology within Islam which is coming from overseas?
Well, as we have just discussed, the various failures of governments encourage the growth of such entities in the country which can easily take on violence and terrorism for the achievement of their goals and objectives. For instance, in Nigeria, the gap between the north and south is a matter of conflict and strain between the two parts of the country. And particularly in the north, you have majority of Muslims. And this particular organization, Boko Haram, which actually means the Western education is forbidden, and that was one of the reasons why they attacked this school and killed so many innocent students. They are actually a branch of Jamiatul Ahl Sunnah Lid-Dawat wal Jihad. This is the actual philosophy they follow. And they are into jihad for the spread of the teachings of Islam, what they believe to be the teachings of Islam, and also forbid their people to go into schools which have Western-style education. So this is their philosophy. And you find the same in Somalia. In Somalia, for the past 20 years, There is no concept of governance or state. And these nodes and hubs of terrorism find corners for their nourishment and for their breeding very easily. And then when these nodes start growing within the country, the external forces of violence and terrorism encourage them. They provide resources, they provide finances for them. And you have these big tiger terrorism institutions like, Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is basically base, and as you know, their base is in Afghanistan. And it started, with the influence of the Americans during the Russia-Afghanistan war,
So there's a very clear international dynamic, which is weaknesses within countries in terms of governments and famine being exploited from overseas.
Very true.
I think that within Twitter there's been quite a lot of this sort of debate of is this a product of economic failure, or is it a product of Islamic extremism? And I think we're getting quite a rich insight into this. Brother Kaleem, what have we found on Twitter?
Yeah, I think that's being voiced around Twitter. People are saying similar things, in that Islam is a religion of peace, and the fact that Islam is being exploited for other ulterior motives.
One important thing to understand is that terrorism as such has absolutely nothing to do with religion and Islam. Terrorism has been there for the past 2,000 years. Remember the times 2,000 years ago when the Palestinians rose against the Romans because they wanted to get the Romans out. And more recently, in 1914, we had terrorism in France. We had terrorism in so many other countries. We had terrorism in this country, in Ireland. So terrorism has been coming up with various heads off and on during the history of humanity. It has absolutely nothing to do with Islam. Islam, as Ahmadiyyat has portrayed it, and the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Amirul Mumineen, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, has been traveling all over West and East, trying to convince the world that Islam is a religion of love, Islam is a religion of peace, Islam is a religion of tolerance, and it provides protection, and it provides brotherhood and sympathy and love to everybody without any distinction of faith or religion or anything of the sort.
It's really very much, from what we're hearing, it's very much Islam itself has a pure ideology which is very much counter to terrorism, but there really are wider economic, social, political, military forces causing some sort of contamination within. So let's now quickly go to the Associate Spokesperson for the Secretary General of the UN, Farhan Haq, and then we're going to come back to the studio because there's a lot of ideas coming forwards now. I think we need to further examine them. So let's now go to the video.
Now we're joined here by Mr. Farhan Haq, who's the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon's Associate Spokesperson. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. What do you think are the reasons for the rise in extremism in countries like Nigeria and Kenya? And how much are you concerned as somebody from UN?
Well, the Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon, has been very concerned about the rise of extremist groups in many parts of the world. This is happening around the world, but as you noticed, yes, in Nigeria and Kenya as well, there have been recent extremist attacks. We've condemned those attacks, which have involved the killing and terrorizing of innocent civilians. And we certainly hope that the international community will maintain its solidarity against armed extremists and the damage that they can do.
What do you think should be done now to promote interreligious harmony within that region?
Well, the United Nations has taken a great number of initiatives to try to encourage religious understanding and religious harmony. We have an initiative called the Dialogue Among Civilizations, where we try to bring leaders, particularly from the Christian, secular, and Muslim worlds, together and have them participate in a genuine dialogue with each other so that that the peoples of the various religions learn to respect each other. This is really not a problem isolated to any religion. In any religion, there can be the problem of extremist groups who use the religion to further their political agendas, and of course part of the danger is if those groups take to arms and use violence for the propagation of their aims. And so we've taken a stand against extremism across the board, regardless of which religion it may be.
Mr. Haq, what do you think? In our Muslim countries, can they play some active role in helping out the situation, or it's not being done enough? And what is UN doing in this regard?
Well, yes, they can do, and the UN has tried, including through its Dialogue Among Civilizations initiative, to bring Muslim leaders in. Some of the Muslim countries have played a very good, very positive role in trying to promote the initiatives we've had for understanding among the world's faiths, and we hope that can continue.
Some people think that interference from different nations is required, but others would argue that no. I mean, countries should mind their own business and they should not really interfere with other regions in the world. Specifically now in case of Kenya and Nigeria, what's the take of UNs in this regard? Should they be allowed to solve their problems themselves, or is it really needed that, again, some big powers interfere?
Well, as you know, nations are sovereign entities, and the United Nations respects the sovereignty of all of its member states. And certainly that's the case with countries like Kenya and Nigeria. At the same time, if those countries need any particular help in dealing with the situations that they face, we stand ready to help them as needed.
What do you think the future holds in the view of UN and people like yourself, whether we can create true democracy across the board?
Certainly the hope is that we can create true democracy across the board. There's any number of challenges there. We've tried to assist any number of countries in terms of writing constitutions, holding national dialogues among their populations, building societies and governments that are truly inclusive. It varies, of course, from place to place, and sometimes it does not work. But we'll keep up with that effort, and we believe that a more tolerant and a more democratic world is probable.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Farhan Haq. We hope that UN plays its very important role in establishing peace world over. Thank you once again.
Now we know from the statements and the actions of Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab and many of the other Islamic extremist groups or terrorist groups around the world, that one of their main aims is to establish what they consider to be Sharia within a country, and to have a complete fusion of politics and religion and a complete joining of government and of the mosque and state, for want of a better term. So this is a really important question which needs to be asked: is this a central principle of Islam, that religion should become part of the political system? Can I go to yourself, Dr. Iftikhar, for that?
Well, God has absolutely made it very clear in the Holy Quran that everything belongs to God Himself. And governing or governance is a trust of Allah. So whoever is in government, he's holding a trust which is a divine trust, which has to be fulfilled with honor and excellence. And therefore, religion has its own role to play. It is not there to go into affairs of the state and governance. And the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, even recently in Australia, he made it very clear that, and in Singapore as well, that religion and state are two separate entities. State has its own responsibilities of governance. Make sure that those principles for the maintenance of peace and law and order, which Allah has prescribed, are executed in the best possible way. And therefore, state and religion must fulfill their obligations as prescribed by Allah. And that is how there can be prosperity and there can be unity within the people and the nation as well. And both their spiritual and their moral needs will be taken care of, and at the same time, their material prosperity, their unity, their role as a member of the world community would be fulfilled to the best, if the state is fulfilling its responsibilities as well.
Well, we have examples of this, arguably, within Ghana, of religion and religious organisations playing a very positive role within the state, just as the Caliph of Islam has commanded and has guided the world. Particularly, I know yourself, Amir Ghana, you've been able to interact with the Peace Council within your country in order to promulgate this. What can we learn, and how is it achieved within Ghana?
You see, the truth is what His Excellency has already articulated very, very clearly. It is this, that terrorism has existed throughout the world and over the period. But to do it in the name of any religion is very, very unfortunate. And so the word that you used was hijacking, which is, to me, very appealing. People just hijack other religions for terrorist activities, because religion itself doesn't teach that. So that is a very important point to make. Now, having made that point, it is important also to let everybody in the world know that in order to reject terrorism in the name of religion, they must realize that religion does not teach terrorism. So wherever people are doing anything that smacks of terrorism in the name of religion, they should be educated to understand that this is not religion. This is your own fabrication, pure and simple. Now, having done that, when we come to minimizing such activities, I think the best antidote is interreligious dialogue. Interreligious dialogue that will create interreligious cooperation, understanding, respect, that will enable people of different religions, Muslims, Christians, and indeed traditional African religions, leaders, to sit down and discuss matters of peace, development, justice, as well as fair play. When that happens, then you have an insulation. People cannot just break into that, sort of fortress and then do the terrorist sort of activities that they do, like it has happened in Ghana. In Ghana, we have had interreligious cooperation and harmony, as a result of which the government has also built other institutions around it. For instance, we have the National Peace Council. It's the only council that we know of the world which has been passed by an act of parliament. And people have come from both European countries and African countries to study the model. Because here is a place where people of different religions, because Ghana is made up of different religions. You have Christians of all the denominations, you have Muslims of all the denominations, but nobody is condemning any other. We are saying that we are all worshiping God. It is for God to decide who is right and who is not. But here on earth, we have a duty to ourselves, we have a duty to our country, we have a duty to our children, we have a duty to posterity. And because of that, we must make sure we build peace, we must make sure there is harmony, we must make sure we use the talent that God has given us to build our country and develop our country.
And this has been done very well in Ghana.
And that is being done very, very well. So that is a model that can be replicated in other countries.
Which is a really useful context within which Kenya and Nigeria can perhaps look at.
That's right.
We've very much building on these positive examples which you've talked of, and I guess central to some extent the themes of secularization which you've talked of, along with spiritual rejuvenation through Islam. We've been in touch with the UN Rapporteur on Religious Freedom. This is, of course, Dr. Heine Bielfeldt, and we've had him on the show earlier to talk about freedom of religion. We got in touch with him again to say, what positive examples can we look at where religious freedom is being properly respected around the world, and within which Islam is in fact playing a very positive role. So he gave us some good insights into this. So let's take a look at the videos now.
Other countries within Africa?
I'm always a bit careful when it comes to ranking or global figures. But now you mentioned Africa. Let me tell you one very positive experience that I had recently when conducting a country visit to Sierra Leone. I saw a number of schools, public schools, run by the Ahmadiyya community. And, I mean, those schools have a high prestige. And among students, but also among teachers, you find a variety of people coming from an Ahmadiyya background themselves, but also Sunni Muslims, Christian teachers, and Christian students. It's quite amazing.
Dr. Bielefeld, where do you think this rise in extremism is coming from? Is it from within these countries, or do you think there are external factors that are playing part?
Obviously, external factors do play an enormous role. I mean, no society nowadays is a closed society. And also I saw that in Sierra Leone, that people knowing about the positive relations that they have accomplished there, fear this could be lost. Because, I mean, you see TV channels, radio stations with some very radical voices, not only Islamic voices, sometimes also radical Christian voices, that threaten the existing harmonious relationships in Sierra Leone. And I mean, I've never been to Nigeria myself, but people there look at Nigeria as a warning example. So things can deteriorate. Nothing should be taken for granted, but also things can improve. And one should not forget that, for instance, in Pakistan, where the situation is extremely negative nowadays, it was different a few decades ago, when the 1948 Universal Declaration on Human Rights was under discussion. Pakistan, in those days, represented by a member of the Ahmadiyya community, and in his capacity as foreign minister, was one of the most vocal representatives of the Human Rights Commission, arguing for a full understanding of freedom of religion or belief, including the right to change.
Now, there's a danger of groups forcing their own laws within their countries and imposing their version of Sharia law. Where do you think this is going to head?
I mean, of course, there is a tendency in many countries, including, unfortunately, in sub-Saharan African countries, now to see Sharia as a set of enforceable legal norms. And therefore, I would always encourage interpretations also that, from the perspective of freedom of religion or belief, say, if faith is something originating from the person's conviction. Of course, faith is not just an individualistic thing. Then, of course, we have norms, but religious norms should not be enforced by the state.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Dr. Bielefeld, for joining us, and all the best.
Jonathan, we're continuously receiving tweets live throughout the programme about these very issues. We'll go through a few of them. First of all, one from Bilal Khan, which says, when Muslims do something bad, the media blames Islam. But when non-Muslims do it, it's called freedom of speech or personal interest. It's interesting to see how people are realising that the name of Islam or the religion of Islam is being hijacked. You have other groups like the Lord Resistance Army. It's a terrorist group. It's a Christian group. It's not called Christian terrorism. Iftikhar Asad, you said something about Sri Lanka and the Buddhists there. They're terrorist Buddhists. They're not called Buddhist terrorism. But as soon as a Muslim group does something, it's called Islamic terrorism. We've got other people who have also given similar views. When will such this is from Imtiaz-ud-Din, when will such extremist groups realise Islam, like all great religions, does not condone terrorism? Aspects of the Quran are very clear about the importance of valuing human life. Jonathan Saab.
So it's very heartening, I think, that members of the public are paying very close attention to perhaps the truth of Islam, which we know to be the truth of Islam, that in fact is very much a peaceful religion. But perhaps that leads to another question, is if this very negative image of Islam is coming through the media, some good reporting, but is there a deficit of Muslims around the world speaking up to condemn these actions, and what role should Muslims be playing in the media? Again, Karim Saab, I think you've been doing some good research on this. What have you found?
We can argue that Islam's been hijacked by these terrorist groups, but are Muslim groups doing enough? And this article from the Telegraph is entitled, "After Kenya, no more turning the other cheek to those who hate us." And it questions this very fact. Where is the Muslim condemnation of the Nairobi massacre by maniacs in the name of their religion? And this is a question they directly pose to Muslims themselves. What is the Muslim Ummah doing as an Ummah itself? A, to condemn the attacks, but B, to reform themselves too.
Okay, excellent. So this really raises the question, are Muslims doing enough? So what we've decided to do is to contact the president of the Ghanaian Journalists Association. This is Afeil Money. He's online now, he's via Skype. So if we can go over to Ghana to ask a few questions to Afeil Money. He's via the telephone. Afeil Money, good afternoon. Are you with us?
Good afternoon. This is an interesting program, highly educative, and I really enjoyed it. I hope it's replicated in many parts of the world.
Excellent. We're very keen to ask you some questions on the role of Muslims within the media. We've heard that Ghana in many ways offers positive solutions for the African continent and combating of extremism. But how important do you think it is for the media to play an important role in interfaith harmony in light of your experiences within Ghana?
Certainly, Ghanaians are heavy media consumers, and it is rooted in theory and ingrained in practice that heavy media consumers tend to reflect a view of the world directly derived from the media. So Ghanaian opinions are shaped by the Ghanaian media to a very large extent. Our boss, I'll call him a boss because he's a national figure who spoke about the National Peace Council in Ghana. And the National Peace Council is not only a national symbol of tolerance and understanding, but the composition also reflects religious balance, religious tolerance, and order. So what we do is that we promote, propagate the gospel preached by National Peace Council as much as possible. And as I said, the people on that committee, on that council, which is backed by law, are men of respect and influence. So when they speak, their voices go so far, and the media disseminate as much as possible their views on any issue under the sun. It is interesting to know that even on Christian occasions like Christmas, Easter, I heard our media mission, he goes out of his way to send messages to Christians and all that. All those,
Mr. Murray, can I just jump in? You said a really important thing in terms of the sort of positive role that religious groups can play. How has Ghana managed to maintain fair and impartial reporting, and how have you managed to collaborate with religious organisations and individuals in order to get a really strong, accurate sense of what religions really stand for within your country? What lessons can we learn from Ghana?
Certainly, I think we have something to share with the rest of the world as far as religious tolerance and understanding is concerned. It is a taboo in the media and in the larger society to denigrate Islam or for Christians to denigrate Islam and vice versa, because our constitution clearly states the need to respect each other. So that means mutual understanding and respect to a very large extent reflected in the way we conduct ourselves in the society and in the media. That there is a taboo for the media to go out of its way to target certain religious group or sect for perpetrating or violence and all that. And apart from that, we also disseminate as much as possible good stories about religious understanding and tolerance. For instance, Muslims and Christians coming together to talk peace, to act peace, and to peace. We give it as much media publicity as possible, and then we have a convention where major political parties failed Christians and Muslims in sensitive positions and also the religious balance.
Pardon me for jumping in. I want to take some of your key points which you've talked about in terms of partnership and a real dialogue, it seems, within Ghana between yourself as journalists and religious organisations like that, of course, represented through Amir Sab Ghana within your nation. And I want to go to Amir Sab Nigeria, one of the close countries to Ghana, to find out a little bit more about how they are managing to enter into a dialogue with civil society and with the media. Assalamu alaikum, Amir Sab Ghana, are you with us? Nigeria, pardon me. The particular question I wanted to know is, I know you're doing a lot of work. We've seen the Nigerian Jamaat on some news broadcasts. How have you managed, and to what extent do you think it's been successful, to counter the message of Boko Haram, which is really, to some extent, is showing a very negative side to Islam, to put it gently. How are you managing to combat that sort of narrative which is coming from Boko Haram?
Thank you very much indeed. Let me state first of all that we have also in Nigeria a national interreligious council where Muslims and Christians come together and they are fighting for peaceful coexistence and harmony. The difference between Ghana and Nigeria is that Ghana enjoys good governance. Without good governance, these extremists will still thrive. In the south of Nigeria, we have kidnappers, armed robbers, pipeline vandals terrorizing people. On a daily basis, they kidnap government officials. In fact, it's very, very serious in the south as well. And that's because of bad governance. Once we can reduce level of corruption and falsehood and can improve accountability and transparency, the work of the Interreligious Council will work. There's a lot of unity and harmony among Muslims and Christians. In Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, we go everywhere to let people know. We circulate the books of Khalifat Masih, Khamis, on the pathway to peace. And the whole nation already knows that Islam is for peace. There's no doubt in the mind of most people that they know that Islam is for peace. But we have to be very careful that there are some external influence that want this country divided, destabilized, and they are using these jobless youths to create problems. The State Security Service knows all this. So what we need in Nigeria is not preaching alone. We need to give people good life. There are too many jobless, poor, wretched people on the streets that they can be captured and used to destabilize, to cause violence. And politicians are using these groups to foment trouble. Religion has become a very potent weapon in the hand of politicians, and that's the real problem. People know when people kill people, when people are killed in the college, they say, look, these people cannot be men of God. Yeah. Everybody agrees. Nigeria,
I want to come back to you in one sec, because I want to ask you about some solutions to some of the really sort of quite deep-rooted problems within Nigeria and within other African nations. So please bear with us one sec. I want to feed back in some of your points to the studio. Amir Sab Ghana, we've heard within Nigeria, the Emir of the Nigerian Jamaat contrasting Ghana and Nigeria, talking about problems of structural governance and corruption. We know that there's been a recent sort of agreement between the Ahmadiyya Jamaat and Ghanaian Broadcasting Corporation. We know that there's a positive dialogue happening. What's the key to the success of this type of relationship, and how can other African nations also begin to enter into that kind of positive reporting?
It is very, very important, you see, because the media would always play a very crucial role in educating people about any subject at all whatsoever. And it is important that we cultivate the media. It is important that the media also would see the need to collaborate with various institutions, including religions. And what has happened recently between the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation is very, very significant, because a memorandum of understanding has been signed whereby programs such as the ones that we do here, which are of interest to the people of Ghana and Africa generally, would be made available to the people in our respective countries. So that type of collaboration is very useful, because it will sort of educate people, it will open up their minds, it will make them feel that religion has a role to play, And the role should be to bring people together and not to divide them. And that is what I think could be useful to be replicated in other countries of West Africa and Africa. So.
Well, this is a very positive thing we can take from this. So let's move on to the fourth part of our show now, which is essentially the future and what we think will be taking place in Africa in the years ahead, and how we can prevent future attacks, such as the Kenyan mall attack, taking place again. If I can come to Dr. Iftikhar Niaz Sahab. You obviously lived in Africa for a period of your work with the UN. You saw firsthand some of the problems that Amir Sahab Nigeria is talking about. You specialised in education and in development. What sort of solutions should governments within Africa and international organisations at the UN level and more generally across Africa as well, what solutions should they look to put in place to prevent these attacks of 50 students and more being shot in their beds in Nigeria and many, many innocent civilians being killed in this terrible mall attack in Kenya? What solutions would you suggest?
Well, basically, the prime responsibility to ensure the safety, security, the prosperity, the general welfare and well-being of the population is the responsibility of the state. And the state must realize and appreciate that they are governed not only by the rules of this earth, but they are also governed by the rules of heaven, which are more important. So this is very important, that the governments must rule with the fear of God in their hearts. There must be distribution of wealth, whatever it is. If the country is poor, then all must share that poverty. And if the country is prosperous, then all must share that prosperity. The sort of divisions we have several states in Africa which have been endowed with great richness by God Almighty. The diamonds in Liberia, and the oil in Nigeria, and of course on the eastern side as well. There are so many graces and so many favors of Allah upon Africa.
The gold in Ghana, you've mentioned.
Yeah, the gold in Ghana, you see, which is very important. And so this wealth must be seen in the life and the thinking of the people as such. This is very important. But what is most important for the Muslim states is to understand and realize that Islam is one religion, and its future and its prosperity and its impact upon the world realizes in its unity. And we are very lucky as members of the Ahmadiyya community that although we are spread in over 200 countries of the world, but we have one leader. And we speak with one voice all over the world. When we talk about peace, it is not the Ahmadis from Ghana or Nigeria or UK. It is the entire Ahmadi world. And this is what is needed in Islam to clear all those misconceptions and misrepresentations and misunderstandings about Islam, not only by others, but Muslims themselves. We cannot say that all these groups which have gone into terrorist activities understand Islam in its true context. Obviously not.
Yes.
They have been misled.
Yes.
And when you see at that, they have been associated with such organizations which had their own motives. Whether they were political or ideological, that's a different question. But they definitely had motives which they wanted to achieve through maneuvering and manipulating such organizations which they could easily handle. And they could handle them because the states were themselves very weak.
We have about a minute and a half, and I want to get a final thought from some of the guests. But I think a key message from Dr. Iftikhar Niaz Sahab is that, on the one hand, you have fragmentation and poor governance, but really unity within religion is the key, and that is offered from Iftikhar Niaz Sahab through the Khalifa of Islam, which is through the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Brother Kaleem, do we have any tweets? Because I know quite a lot of people
very
have been
interesting
active.
tweets from around the world covering this very fact. We've got one that says the media don't cover any good efforts and make the bad into a big deal, painting all with the same colour. So a lot is being done by the Ahmadiyya Jamaat, but the media loves sensation. So you see the terrorists carrying out these atrocities, they'll get the media attention, but all the good works that are being done in the name of Islam, be it Ahmadi or non-Ahmadi, they don't pay any attention to this fact. So this is the point that people are making. Another one that says that the Western press always exacerbates problems by giving the instigators exactly what they most desire, the multiplier effect of a global megaphone.
Okay, well, this is a very valuable insight from the viewers, and we thank them for sending them in. As ever, we have much more that we want to say, but we don't have time to say. So just all that we can do now is to thank our guests so very much for giving us this really rich insight from the different African continents and from the international perspective of the UN as well. So Jazakallah to Amir Sab Ghana, Iftikhar Yar Sab in the studio, Jazakallah to Amir Sab Nigeria on the Skype call, and inshallah we can continue these discussions at a later date. And please, viewers, join us again in a month's time for the next episode of Press Point, in which we'll be examining another current affairs issue and its impact on Islam around the world. I think a key point that we might be able to finish with is Dr. Iftikhar Yar Sab's point that in Africa, when poverty is present, it must be shared, and when prosperity is present, it needs to be shared. And that this is in fact the essential message of Islam, is that unity and oneness is the key, rather than bloodshed and violence and division, which so tragically we've seen in Kenya and Nigeria in the recent last few weeks. That's all we have time for. So Jazakallah, viewers, for joining us again. May Allah bless you. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and may Allah bless you. Jazakallah.